Change is coming to recycling. Here to talk trash with me, Town Manager Mark Ells. Mark, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. So you have one happy camper here that single stream is no longer going to be accepted 60 days or so as we get into the new separation. But why don't we give residents a little overview on how this change came about?
Well, the change is a result of the market for recyclable products changing. And so over the last several years, most communities have moved to what you've referred to as single stream, which means everything that's recyclable can be thrown in together, and then it goes to market, and that market sometimes has the ability to sort it again, but in general, they can sell it as a secondary product to be recycled into something else somewhere in the world. Well, almost a couple of years ago at this point, that began to change, and those markets changed. And they began saying that single stream wasn't a product that they could use. Therefore, what you see us doing is responding to that and going back to a sorted recycled product that will separate out all the things. If you've participated in recycling for a while, this won't be new. This will be the way you used to do it, which is glass. I'm not sure if they go, you'll have to ask PJ Kelleher when he's in here visiting with you about, is it clear and then separating into the colors of glass. Certainly corrugated, newsprint, some plastics, tin and metals, not scrap metals that you throw in the scrap metal pile, that's different. These are tin cans primarily. And I'd have to find out what other products may be out there. You know, for years we didn't allow, when we had sorted, we had no market for miscellaneous paper, for example. We had no market for certain number plastics. And actually we were quite strong in the recycling market, even though a lot of people argued with us that it made no sense to do the sort of manual effort to sort that our facility did. But you know what? We always stayed in control in the event that the recycling market changed. We don't have that control anymore because we went to single stream. Now the market drives us, and we react to the market versus us having sorted this to a point where we can say, hey, you know what? We're going to take this commodity over here. We're going to sit on glass for a while and store it. And we've had to do that. In my involvement with solid waste, at times I've seen us hold different commodities, different recyclable products till a market recovered. I've seen us hold them as much as 18 months. It becomes a storage capacity at a certain point. Certainly a health issue. You don't want to create problems there. But so we're going back to a sorted environment. We're going to keep some bins in for the people who forget for about 2 months, and then you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Meaning you're not going to be able to bring in single stream, mix all your recyclables together and throw them in one bin. That market doesn't exist.
Right. And part of that market as well was sometimes the approach of the person who was recycling, thinking that they could throw all sorts of different things in there. So the single stream had become contaminated. Real people actually separated that stuff as well. So that stream as a contamination, there were things in there that didn't belong. So there's a lot of different issues around single stream. Going back to the separated, really what it comes down to is we just have too much stuff.
Yeah, we need to rethink this one right from the beginning of our thought about what we do with the products we buy, and then kind of those secondary issues that come after buying a product. And for me, this is about reducing the waste stream, reusing the waste stream, and then recycling the waste stream where possible, and then whatever's left you throw away. Right. And you've got to pay a tipping fee to dispose of that. It can either be, as long as it's a licensed way, typically it's incinerated at a waste energy facility. So, in some sense, even a waste energy facility is reusing it to create electricity. It's not recognized as a recyclable though. So then we back up and we think about each of those. And I think we need to have discussions with our residents about, and this isn't just Barnstable, this is everywhere. Have discussions with people about what you're buying. I gave the example at town council where purchasing off the internet's wonderful, but now I get a big box with a whole bunch of plastic stuffing in it, with a little box, or sometimes the product, like I'd buy it off the shelf, but sometimes not. Sometimes a little box and then the product, depending on what it is I'm buying. That's a lot of additional material. Now, corrugated, which is typically the outer box, can be recycled. Good. Got to separate that out. Plastics inside. Maybe we can, given that so many people are doing this, we should see if there's a market to recycle stuffing in its various forms. There must be, especially the ones that are full of air. They're like little balloons, little pillows. We pop those, they go in the trash.
Right.
People were throwing them in the single stream. No, that's trash. But think about this. So that's one example of modification.
You could buy
reduction.
local. You could buy local
well,
and not have
I'm not trying to discourage purchasing on the internet because there's huge benefits to that as well. So, but we need to think about this and then what we do with it. The same as going to the store and buying something. And do you need to buy products with all the packaging? Every product you buy always has a customer satisfaction contact, email or telephone or whatever. You ought to just ask, because ultimately, you buy a plastic container of deodorant, you don't need the box around it. It might make it better for shipping or storage or information or prettier, but you don't need it. You can buy the plastic container.
Right.
If you go to the dollar store, that's how they come. None of them have that packaging. You know why? Because it's less expensive. So we as consumers need to think about the products we're buying, the waste that we're producing as a result of the products, and then we just need to make decisions. The decision that you can't make without ramifications is, well, I'm just going to do it and throw it away and not expect to pay for it. You're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it up front, and you're going to pay for it on the back end. If everybody's okay with that, I think the regulators aren't. They don't want to see waste streams increase. But as a consumer, you could make that decision. So coming back to your first question, why did this all happen? The recycling market changed. Even though you call it recyclable, you really have to go down the line and say, okay, how are we recycling this? Well, we're not. So then what's really happening? It's probably being thrown away. Right. That's the truth.
Yep.
Because if there's no market to be recycled, unless you can sit on it for a certain amount of time, wait out the market, and then bring it back when the market re-emerges, the stuff's going to get thrown away. Right. So right now we're paying $56 maybe a ton for waste. For the single stream to get rid of that, last count it was I think $109 or $110 a ton.
Wow.
And it's not being recycled. So where's it going? So we're paying more, and I don't know that it's being recycled. They may try. They may try to sort it and bring it to market. But if it's contaminated like you just described, meaning you didn't take all the milk out and everything's wet, or there's food residual on it, or they threw a bunch of containers that are kind of the plasticky looking frozen containers in there. And none of that was recyclable. Food waste, milk, freezer boxes that you have.
The little pillow
None of
things
those were
you just said.
recycling to begin with and shouldn't have been in the waste stream, but they're in there. And now that even makes it a more difficult problem because it isn't just recyclables you're going to sort, so you have that added cost and time. Now it's stuff in there that you can't do anything with, and creates real problems when there's a market like we see now. We've gone through cycles like this before. We always had sorted in place, so we were able to adapt better. They were challenging, but better. This time we had gone to the single stream. And really, we were driven by the market. There was a lot of criticism that we didn't offer single stream, so we
Yep.
went there ultimately. It's criticism by our customers. And so, because it's more convenient and it's easier to have one big bin with what you think is recyclable. That doesn't work anymore. And we need to go back to what we were doing and then watch the market. And I think in addition to that, we need to start working with our residents. My recommendation is 6th and 7th graders because they listen. They modify behavior. Somebody like me isn't going to readily modify behavior, even though I might know it's the best thing to do. But young people seem to be very adaptive. Start educating, so in the future they think about how do we reuse these things we buy? You know, how do we reduce it and not buy it at all? And then how do we recycle what there's a market to recycle? And bring that forward.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like the piece that's reusing as well, because there's a lot of products out there that you purchase that either the packaging and or the product itself can be reused. Not necessarily always by yourself. It might be an organization out there. You know, just trying to get some information. Hopefully, you know, in the next few weeks, we'll have some things here on Barnstable Today that'll talk about how you can reuse or reduce. And then ultimately, the recycling, it'll take some time for people to get the message that we're back to the separation of that. Your thoughts on the markets for some of these recyclables? Cardboard always seems to have a market.
Probably because it's domestic. In the case of the single stream, it was primarily not domestic.
Right.
It was shipping it out of country. So if it's a clean, separated, we never recommended. In fact, if you brought in a single stream and it was full of corrugated cardboard, we would educate you to remove it the next time, because there's been a maintainable market for clean corrugated. So I don't really, it's probably turned into the same products that it has been, and therefore the market is supported with that particular product. And we need to look at that in every case. I don't know specifically why that has been sustainable. I'm assuming that there's reuse opportunities or recycle to reuse, meaning they're producing it into something else.
Or the same thing.
Or turn it back
right.
into, yeah, I mean, right, absolutely.
And glass has recently come into the news that you can reuse some recycled glass in construction materials. So there seems to be some market for that.
I mean, I studied that almost 40 years ago when I was going to school for engineering. So, I mean, that's not changed. What, you know, the reality of it is when you turn to a customer and you say, okay, we can do this. We can utilize these products, take them from the waste stream, utilize them in lieu of something else. Then the next question is, okay, well, how much will that product with the recycled cost versus how much with sand or whatever you're replacing with glass, how much will that cost? And am I willing as a consumer to bear that cost? So there's another decision point, again, as a consumer, that we have a tremendous amount of influence over. Not a lot, people don't sit down and think through that a lot of times, just because why would they, unless they're tasked with trying to manage that issue. But that's truly what it comes down to. All of this is driven not only by being very conscious of the environment and trying to do the recycling aspect correctly, but really trying to quantify, you know, the dollar and cents costs are easier to add up. The non-monetary stuff is tougher, and that's a big issue when we're looking at the environment. We got to really look at both. But at the end of the day, is the consumer willing to bear the cost? And if they're not, then what? You're going to force them to do recycling programs, and then they're going to look to subsidize that because the consumer doesn't want to pay for it, but the regulator's telling you have to do it. So then we're going to take money from where to subsidize that? And is this effort a greater priority than that other area? Because we only have so much money. And that becomes a big part of managing the issues. So.
Right. So first off, reduce,
Absolutely.
then reuse,
Yeah, I would encourage it.
and then recycle.
Yep. Where
Excellent.
markets allow.
Where markets allow.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mark.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me.